So the thing with pricing is everybody is scared. If there's one thing that I know that will have restaurant owners shaking in their boots, it is number one, having a key person quit, but number two, increasing prices, because pricing scares everybody. Hey, welcome back to the Restaurant Growth Accelerator. I am your host, Andrew Scott, and today we are talking all about how to increase your prices without losing customers. We've got Nathan Voulgaris here. I know I've done your intro before, but basically you oversaw a restaurant group that did like 60 million in revenue annually, 700 employees. You're a partner in some concepts right now. And he also creates all of Ownership's brand new cool tools and materials. So he keeps us all on the forefront of what restaurant owners need to know and do. So let's dive into it, Nathan. Glad to have you here. What is our instant thought that comes in when we talk about raising prices? Oh my God, we're going to lose customers. People won't come back if we raise our prices. And so here's the thing. That drives more people to stay the same for pricing than anything else. They try to stay the same for pricing because they're afraid of losing customers. But the problem is that everything else keeps going up, and if you don't, you get left behind, right? You don't want to be that person. You know, seen these videos of a cruise ship and somebody goes out on this excursion on a cruise ship and then like they're late to get back on the boat and they see the cruise ship just like sailing away and they're stuck there on the dock. They're screwed. They got no way to get back on the ship. Ship's gone. So that, in essence, is most of our restaurant owners if you don't keep up with pricing. And a question I ask people is I say, hey, like, are you a business or a charity? Because if you're a charity and you don't need to make money, no worries. Keep doing what you're doing. But if you're actually in business to make money and provide a life from your family, raising prices will be part of it. So what we're going to be talking about today is how we do it effectively so we minimize the damage of raising those prices and try and keep the max amount of customers possible. So Nathan, let's talk through it. Let's throw some tips out there.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit it right on the head when it comes to fear. It's always a fear. It's this thing that we know, but we don't know, right? I know if I charge another dollar for my burger or my pasta, I know I'm going to lose customers. I mean, the first thing that I think you need to realize is that you don't know that. You don't know that at all. And if, in fact, in my opinion, if that's true, if you raise your pasta price by $1, let's say, and you lose customers, then they're not leaving because of the price. They're leaving because they're no longer getting the value.
Well, let's put this in context. If your currently price is $22 and it goes to $23 and you have a mass exodus of customers from your business, you don't have a great business to begin with. Let's just be real about that.
Yeah, it was tenuous at best to begin with. Yeah, I mean, I think that's the biggest piece is number one, increase your prices without losing customers. Well, here's the thing. You have to raise your prices in an appropriate way, right? So, I mean, I hear from operators all the time, I just did a price increase. I raised everything by $1. Okay, well, that's not the best way to do it, first of all, because if you increase everything by $1, there's probably a few items on there that are too expensive. You've probably priced yourself out of the market on those things. But you might be underpriced still on other items. They probably required $1.25 or $1.50, and that is still now appropriate to the market, for what people are paying for that value. And then that really brings me, mentioning the value. I'd like to talk a little bit about value proposition because
let's do it.
And if you increase your menu pricing and you start to see, customers leave or get negative feedback due to your pricing, you have to, get real. You're going to have to look in the mirror a little bit around your value proposition. And what I mean by value proposition is the quality of your product, the quality of your service, the speed of your service, the look of your restaurant. Is it clean? Is it cluttered? Is it, when people come in, are they greeted appropriately? Does the menu look professional? Do the plates come clean, rims? So the value proposition is different for every restaurant. If you're a quick serve and it's, counter service, are they being greeted appropriately? Do they feel welcome? Is the place tidy? Do the products look good? I mean, there's a million different things to look at. And the reality is, and I've looked at a lot of different data on this, reports on it, trend analysis, you name it. And the reality is that people are happy to pay appropriately to the level of service that they expect. And if we're meeting and exceeding their expectations and creating an experience, and your prices are aligned with that proposition, you're not going to have any problems. The fear is unfounded.
Well, and one of the things that I always talked about was, say you have a $10 price point. We want to be giving $20 service with a $10 price point, right? We want to be giving a $20 product with a $10 price point. Like that perceived value should be there. And here's where it gets different, right? And this is something I've seen in, the franchise that I've been a part of. This is something I've seen with other brands and other, individual restaurants over time, is they have to raise their prices. But there can be a point where you go into a negative value proposition. So what I mean by that is all of a sudden, let's say, for example, your prices went from $10 to $15, just for example. Obviously, that's a gigantic one. I do never recommend you do a 50% increase all in one shot. But just say, for example, over time that builds up to be this $15 item versus a $10 item. But all of a sudden, the service starts lacking from where it was earlier. All of a sudden, that's not worth that anymore, because just because you increase the price doesn't mean you can get away with lower service, lower quality product. Like you have to actually maintain or exceed that, because it can happen where if your operations aren't tight, all of a sudden you come in, and when you do raise that price, that's where people are going to go, hey, now this isn't worth it, right? But to counter that as well, a couple other fast facts I need to deliver to everyone. There's about 20% of your customer base that would happily keep you broke. Just so you know, there will be a percentage of your customer base that actually doesn't really care about you. They don't care how much money you make. They don't care about any of that. They will just want the cheapest thing possible. And so when we talk about losing customers, sometimes those are the ones you're going to get complaints from, right? Because they are just only price conscious, and they will then go to the next cheapest place. And I would tell you that's not the business that you build, or that's not the customer base you build a really successful and profitable business off of, right? So we can't organize our entire business around a small subset of the customer that doesn't give a shit about us anyway, right? We have to go after the bigger portion that will pay a little bit more, and it's okay if we lose a few of them. We just don't want to lose our really consistent regulars. We don't want to lose the ones that are actually our ideal avatar, right? And so that's one thing I wanted to point out, which I think is extremely valuable for us to understand, is that right there.
Yep. I think that's well said. And here's another piece to what we're talking about that I don't, we can talk about the psychology of it and what the market will bear, and we could talk about consistency and training and all of that. But here's kind of the core of it, in my opinion. I'm a very data-driven human being, right? I want to see numbers. Numbers don't lie. There's no emotion to them. And trackability is the gospel truth when it comes to business management, in my opinion. Now, if we change our pricing and then all of a sudden we feel like we're losing customers, number one, how do you know that? Are you tracking guest counts? Are you tracking average guest spend? And if we do assume that we're going to lose, let's say, I don't want to say 20%, but let's say we lose a percentage of guest count, but we've increased our pricing. What has happened with average guest check? How much are they spending when they're in the restaurant? Have we solidified what our ideal customer avatar looks like? And when we're catering to the clients or the customers that we want, and that we see fitting into our restaurant, if we've increased the pricing, we may be able to close that gap in sales, even if we do see a reduction in guest counts. But if you don't track it, if we're not looking at transaction numbers or guest counts, and then reverse engineering that through sales, dividing it by sales to come up with an average guest number or spend, it's all guesswork. And then emotion just leaks right back in. We don't know the truth.
Well, the average restaurant owner that we talk to before they come on board and actually start working with us, they base everything off emotion. I even just did a webinar the other day where we talked about looking at, week over week numbers, month over month numbers versus year over year numbers. And so again, someone could raise their prices in one day and then look at the next week and be like, "Oh my God, my sales are down. It must be because I raised my prices on Monday. Now my sales are down." And the reality is that likely has nothing to do with it, because people don't all of a sudden know that you raised your prices until they come in, right? The thing is, most people under a 10% price increase will often not notice. Or if you do, you're looking at like less than 1% of your customer base ever actually, really noticing or saying something. Because especially when you add in one menu item, then a drink, and then you have a second person there, say, it's a table for two, all of a sudden, they're not going to notice the individual price increase. The ones who might notice are the ones that come in and pay cash and get the same thing every day. That's a little bit of a different story. But you know what I mean? Most people aren't going to notice. And so that's a really, really important thing, is that we need to look at all those numbers to know if my sales are dropping, is it because of that? Or is it because this same week last year, the same thing happened and that's my normal trend? Because maybe there's nothing to solve there, because we don't want to take a data point and then make a decision based on a data point when that data point could mean something totally different, right? Because in essence, what I'm saying is that we don't want to take an issue and solve it the wrong way. Because if you take an issue and solve it the wrong way, you can solve it the wrong way 50,000 times. You're still not going to get the result that you are looking for. Because we have to solve the problem in the right way to actually solve the problem. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah. And the problem might be that your menu isn't set up to be profitable. So like you said at the very beginning of this podcast is, are we a charity or are we a business? And if we can define ourselves as a charity, then listen, by all means, continue to sell menu items that are below the point of profit acquisition. Give her. If you're rich and this is a hobby, give her. I don't think most people are in that situation. Yeah. I think the business is too hard for it to not be set up to even have the opportunity to make money. So raising your prices isn't about being greedy. It's not about, I want to buy a new car or get a new yacht and I want to take more vacation, so I got to make some more money. It's about charging appropriately for the products and services that you offer. And you got to take the fear out. And I think that's really the core of what we're talking about is price is price. The cost of your products to bring them in and to make a dish or an offering, a drink or a plated food item, that's the cost. And you have a profit margin that you have to hit. And if you can't hit it, here's the crazy thing, then you can't sell it. It can't be on your menu. It has to go somewhere else or change. There's no other real option to it.
So can we say that one again for the people in the back? So if you can't hit the profit margin you need to hit on an item, it shouldn't be on your menu.
Don't sell it. Don't sell it, right? If I can only charge $150 for a Ferrari, I'm going to lose money all day, every day on that deal, right? People are going to buy it. We're going to be busy. I'm going to be selling Ferraris all day, every day. But then I'm going to be living in a box down by the river. Not even a van, because I won't be able to afford a van.
You wouldn't even be able to afford the Ferrari you're selling.
I couldn't even buy the Ferraris I'm selling. So, I mean, that's just a reality of it. How do you get there, and what do you do to get to a point where all of your items are profitable or set up to that point? I mean, that's a whole nother conversation, maybe another episode. But the reality is that if the price needs to change, if we can identify that it has to change, then it has to. And if you're losing customers because of that, it's not because of the pricing. It's not because of the product. It's something else. It's probably everything else. Your value proposition has declined while your price has increased, and that's a problem.
Awesome. So let's talk about how we can mitigate some of these things, so we know that we do have to change our prices. And obviously we did another episode talking about some of that other stuff, and we're going to have another one talking about exactly how to, cost out your menu and look at all those things. But just back of napkin math, look at everything it takes to basically build that product, and everything, from the garnish to every main product. If you're, takeout, packaging, exactly. I was going to say that. So
people forget about packaging.
You want to have all that in there, and then look at your price, and basically need to divide what it costs into that purchase price, and that gives you a percentage, right? So that's kind of how we're looking at our menu. Now, some things can have higher margins, some things can have lower margins. Obviously, that's going to go into your overall menu mix, but at just back of napkin math, that's how you do it. You just got to add all that stuff up. And if you haven't done that, do it on your top 5 sellers so you have a rough idea of where you're at. And that will give you what's called a theoretical cost, right? Because your actual might be different, because we talked on another episode about, Billy making these nachos that just like, handfulling cheese on there. Obviously, your actual could be different because what actually happens could be different from the theoretical. But if your theoretical is off, no matter what you do in your actual, you're still going to be screwed. So we need to have your theoretical. We need to still be priced right. If you're not priced right, there's nothing you can do that's going to fix improper pricing. You can't outmarket improper pricing because then you'll just be busy, you've been broke. And that's not what we want you to do. So we want you to know those numbers. So now, once we've identified that, hey, this margin is not high enough for our product, so we need to increase our pricing to bring that down where we want it to be. Here's some things we can do to mitigate that. So let's dive in. Let's give the people what they want. Hey, real quick, if you're a multi-unit restaurant owner or you're looking to become one, I've identified the 3 deadliest mistakes that are killing most restaurants right now. And more importantly, I'll show you how to avoid these exact mistakes. Just grab my free copy of the Multi-Unit Restaurant Playbook by going and clicking on the link in the description below. Inside, you'll discover my proven system for building a restaurant empire that runs on autopilot and the mistakes you must avoid if you want to stay profitable and scalable. So get the free playbook and transform your business today.
Yeah, I mean, number one, so sure, we've changed our pricing, and now all of a sudden, people are seeing this new pricing. How do we make sure that we don't lose them as a result of it? I think I've already talked about this, but I'm going to say it again. The first piece is you have to absolutely make sure that your training, your setup, your purchasing is perfect. It has to be perfect. Execution has to be perfect. Because if somebody gets a burger that's cold and the bun is squished or the meat isn't cooked properly and now it costs more, listen, they're not coming back. They're going to go somewhere else. So yeah, you're going to lose.
Let's just hold on for a second. You're telling me that cold food will make people not... No, just kidding. Everybody knows that. What I was going to say was that there is something too, because I hear this all the time from operators, because I'm going to be real with you guys. Restaurant owners are stubborn and we have gigantic egos. Now, here's why I say that. It's because I fall into that category. And here is why that's important. Is because I believe that restaurant owners have this like cognitive dissonance, and they're basically just they've created themselves their own little reality. And I say that is because the restaurant industry, we have to endure some really shitty things sometimes, especially near the start of our business when we don't know how to operate it properly, that most people would just give up and wash out. But the ones who stay are the ones who become, stubborn enough to see it through, or just keep saying, yeah, like if I can just get this done, then everything's going to be great. If I could just do this, then everything will be, we just have this hope that just seemingly doesn't go away. So the reason why I say this is important and why this is relevant to this conversation is not that we're all crazy. We're all a little crazy, but the reason why I say that is because most people, if you ask them if their food is good, they will say, absolutely, yes. And if you say, hey, is your service good? Absolutely, yes. And so the question I would ask is, how do you know that? Mm-hmm. Oh, we have good reviews. Okay, well, how many? In comparison to all of the customers that came in last week, how many reviews did you get? Likely there's actually not that many. And so if you're as good as you think you are, there would be more evidence of it. And if you track loyalty, you can kind of see some of the return visits and see if that's increasing. So in some cases, your food might actually be good. And maybe your service is good. But what I am always looking for is evidence of that. And I am always looking for unprompted evidence of that. So for example, we would set up a couple, pictures or like little sheets saying like, hey, this is how you would, text us for feedback or whatever. We'd have, a number there that would go to a system that we'd monitor or whatever the case is. And so we're looking for that customer feedback. And one, because if there's an issue, we want to address it right away. But we're also looking for people, speaking well. Hey, I had an amazing experience. And we want to be looking for those things because most of us think our service is awesome and we have the best menu, but you really don't. And just because people don't complain or because you have some people that submitted a Google review and stuff like that does not mean that everything is perfect. And the reason I'm saying that is because If you believe everything's perfect, you're not going to be looking critically at it, and you're not going to be looking for ways to change it, right? If you think there's no problem, you're not going to focus on it. You're going to focus on something else. And so when we get to raising prices, having that customer experience is really, really crucial. And so that's why I wanted to make sure, if you're thinking here like, oh yeah, my service is amazing, well, let's check that out. Because I actually had someone on this webinar the other day, and I asked the question, as I said, everyone, we had like 20 or 30 people on this webinar. I was like, guys, how many of you right now in your businesses have a team who 100% of the time are upselling exactly the way that they should be 100% of the time, every one of your staff members? And one guy said yes. And I'm like, oh, really? Tell me about that. Tell me about that. So every single customer, every single time, everyone is upselling exactly as they should be, and they're succeeding at it. And he's like, oh, okay, well, maybe not every time. But like when I'm there, we always do it. I'm like, I don't care about when you're there. I care when you're not there, because that shows, your business and your systems, right? So that's kind of what
you can never leave then.
Well, exactly. And we want to build a business that we can actually take a vacation from, right?
Yeah.
We want to build a business we don't have to take a vacation from, let's be real. But we want to be able to leave it, and we want to be able to then move on and open up more locations and do more things, right? Because life is more than just being inside the kitchen. So that's kind of what I wanted to mention. And so he was like, okay, maybe not. And so I just wanted to give you guys that example. So if that's what you believe, that everything's perfect, maybe give yourself a second guess, unless there is overwhelming evidence and your sales are naturally going up by, 20, 30% every year without any marketing spend at all, then that will tell you that, the word of mouth is getting around enough to make a difference in your business. But if it's not doing that, there's probably still things that we need to look out for. So that's what I wanted to say, just because that's what we're talking about. And I want to make sure you guys understand that vantage point to think critically about your own business. All right. Sorry for the little diatribe there.
No, that's a great rant, an apt rant, let's say. And I would just say this, so when it comes to, we talked a little bit about customer feedback in that space. Here's the thing. When customers get what they expect, they're not writing a review. If they just get it's okay, they're not going to write a review. If they're even satisfied or slightly oversatisfied, odds are they're not going to write a review. If they are disappointed, though, if they're disappointed or they don't find value in your establishment and the experience that you provide, they're going to write a negative review. The people are more often driven to a negative review than a positive review, and that's just human nature, right? We'd rather complain than praise, and it's sad. But here's the thing: the tipping point between getting no review or even a great review and getting a negative review, if they say it's not worth it, don't go there. It doesn't just end with that. They're too expensive. When somebody says they're too expensive, they're saying something else as well, right? Yeah. I didn't get value. They're too expensive for the quality of the food. Okay. So the problem isn't the price. The problem is the quality of the food. They're too expensive. It's not even that awesome there. It's always dirty, or my service sucks. Okay. So listen, once again, the problem wasn't the price. The problem was the value proposition. So how do we not blame it on appropriate pricing? How do we, instead of looking through the window for an excuse, we look in the mirror and say, what is it that we're not providing? That's where power lies. That's where change lies. That's where the realization of how your business is operating changes everything.
Yeah.
So, I guess if I were to take it back to, the main statement, how do we raise our prices without losing customers? Do it right the first time. That would be kind of my big statement. Produce it right the first time. Do service right the first time. Train your staff to execute it all perfectly every time the first time. If you do that and you're priced appropriately, I think that's the key kind of tagline here, right? You can't charge $75 for a hot dog, a crappy hot dog, even if it's a Nathan's hot dog, which I am partial to. Listen, you can't do it. If you're priced inappropriately, then that's the problem. But if you're priced appropriately and somebody has a complaint, it's not the price. 9 times out of 10, 9.9 times out of 10. That's
so the price didn't match the value.
That's right. That's right. And if the price matches the value and it's still too high, then I'm here to tell you once again, that doesn't belong on your menu. That item doesn't belong there then. It's not the people you're servicing, and it's not the menu you're producing. And that's another hard truth.
Or it's not the customer that should be in your business. One of those two.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. I would agree. I would agree to that.
Awesome.
Not
What's
much
next?
more to say there, I'd say, when it comes to keeping them once you charge them more.
Oh, there's another item here that says,
The staff concern piece.
yeah. And
Yeah.
once you do, yeah.
That's a good point. And this may be another interesting thing to bring up is, how are we dealing with complaints? Because, we talked about getting reviews. Sure. Online reviews. Here's the thing. I would love to get no online reviews, no negative online reviews, because any kind of customer feedback that might be value-based or pricing-based, that needs to be dealt with in the restaurant before the customer leaves. When they're gone, getting them back in the store or back through your door, man, that is a challenging that's a challenging thing. And I'll say this, and this might sound a little offensive, but I had issues with some of my managers years ago where they were not touching tables. They weren't, checking in on the quality of the service and the experience for our guests. And when they did, if something negative came up, they just shied away and they, it's not my fault. I'm so sorry, whatever it might be. And we started this conversation, and this might be a little offensive, but we started the conversation of, you're going to put on your shit-eating suit. You're going to put it on, and you're going to eat all of it. You're going to listen to everything they have to say, and you're going to deal with every individual feedback point from that customer in that moment. And they are going to leave feeling cared for and heard. And that's the piece. So
It's hard.
It's incredibly hard, and it's challenging. And especially if you're let's say a minimum wage server, and somebody says, why is this so expensive? And why is this not good? And what's up with this? We're not happy. They're not going to be naturally able to deal with that situation. So if you haven't run through some role playing with them, if you haven't given them, listen, I don't even care if it's a little scripted, because you've probably heard servers give you these kinds of comments in the past, but they got to know what to do. If it's a price issue, what do you say? How do you deal with it? How do you listen? If it's a quality concern, what do you say? And I've always been I get so upset when I hear a server say something like, oh, I'm sorry it's taking so long. The kitchen screwed this up. Or, oh, yeah, there's cheese on there. Oh, I rung it in this way. Somebody else made a mistake. You own it. You sit there and you treat that guest as though they're your guest. And if they're not happy with something, you treat them like they were a guest in your house, and you explore the comment, and you just say, oh, so you're not, you don't enjoy this. Tell me a little bit about that. Okay, listen, let me take care of you. No, kitchen did that, or busser did that, or my manager isn't around. Let me go get the manager. If they can deal with it in the moment, there's power in that.
So, okay, let's dive into this for a second, because, obviously I've had complaints before as well. I'm actually planning on doing a podcast on how to handle complaints, but let's dive into this a little bit. So when you get that complaint, the important thing is, the reason they're bringing it up is for it to be dealt with. Because if they're bringing it up, they want something, they feel like they have been underserved in comparison to what their expectation was, right? And so if we do nothing or blame someone else, that doesn't inspire confidence or trust. What does inspire confidence and trust is if we do own that situation. I am so sorry about that. I can't believe that happened. I am going to make this right for you. You told me that was important, and and that's not what happened. I'm going to get to the bottom of this, and I'm going to fix it. And by taking that ownership, you don't have to say I screwed up, whatever. Just be like, that didn't happen. Let me fix that for you, and taking ownership of it. And so then my rule is always to take it and then go one above. So take it, say they didn't get cheese on their burger that they wanted. You know what? Hey, well, I also brought you this instead. So I remember this one time I was eating at a restaurant and I wanted sweet potato fries, and they still brought me the regular. And I let him know, I'm like, hey man, here, you can take these back. And he's like, no, you keep those. I'm going to get you some extra sweet potato fries. Granted, I didn't need that many fries, but I'm like, appreciate it. I like having a mix. It's excellent. So and I was okay with the way that was handled. And so when complaints happen, we actually have the ability to inspire trust and turn people from potentially never coming back and being advocates against us in the way of reviews, or telling, their 10 friends that, they didn't like the experience, blah, 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 blah. And having that story come up at parties for the next 5 years about how bad their experience was at this place. And I have stories like that. But we have the ability to then turn them into a raving fan. And so one example, and I didn't even know this was happening, but at one of my restaurants, there was this review that I saw. And to be honest, I didn't check my reviews as much as I should have back in like 2009, 2010. And anyway, I just randomly checked them one day, and I found this customer relayed this story about how there was a delivery order, and then like everything that could have went wrong. It's like it was an hour and a half to get there, and they didn't even get the right items when it came to, like, everything was wrong. And then she wrote, but then I contacted, the business, and the owner, Andrew, made it right. And so basically what I had then done is, I basically then, I think it was the next day or something like that. When I got a hold, I'm like, no worries. I'm going to give you like your entire order for free again. I'm going to deliver it out personally. And I threw in like some extra stuff, and I like gave them my cell number in case there was ever any issues that ever happened again. And they were so floored by that they wrote the review and like, Andrew will take care of you. He cares about his business. If you ever have any issues, I'm 100% confident that this is a business I will continue going to, because I know if something ever happens, they're going to make it right. And that created a raving fan enough to leave a positive review. But it's so easy in the moment to be like, well, our driver was stupid, and oh my God, the employees I have are so dumb. Well, who the fuck hired them first? It was you. So anyway, or if you have a manager that did it, then why did you have that manager working for you? Anyway, point is, we got to take responsibility is what I'm getting at, right? So it's basically where you can't blame it. So a server that says, oh, well, the kitchen sucks or this happens, or like, no, like, don't put the blame, own it, because people will gain respect when you own it. That's what they expect from you. They expect you to listen, and they expect you to fix it. They don't care about anything else. So listen and fix it and go a step above whatever the issue was. And that will then gain some of that goodwill back. And that will keep them coming back. But if we don't do that, or if we just offer them like a little discount here, or like if we go below, or we don't acknowledge it, or we don't listen, they're still going to be mad. And then they are going to be anti your restaurant for a long time. So we need to role play this with servers. What happens if this happens? We literally drill them on what they should be doing in those situations. Doesn't take much, but that's literally a part of my training, to go through how to handle those negative situations and how to handle customer experiences. And we drill our supervisors on it. We drill our managers on it. Like how we handle complaints it's so crucial, because it gives us the opportunity to turn a negative into a positive. And if we don't take that opportunity, we're missing out. So,
yeah, empower your staff to deal with it in the moment. I like when you say, go one above. That kind of fits with a philosophy that I've always had in my restaurants as well, which is we make it as simple as this. 49-51 is what we call it. So 49% of the time, you are going to be ensuring, profit and cost is in line and following procedure, because that's how it's designed, right? So 49% of the time, that's your focus. And the choices you make, 49% of the time, that's the core of those choices. 51% of the time, you are going to make choices and take actions that are going to be focused only on the guest experience. So if it's a question between profit and guest experience, that's the 1%. You're going to lean towards the guest experience. So if you think, because of whatever complaint or situation at the table, that for that guest to leave with the best experience they can, if you believe taking care of their meal or giving them a gift card or whatever it might be, if that's appropriate, I hold you capable, and I hold you and give you empowerment to make that choice. And your manager will back you up on it. Mostly because I'm not a big fan of a server saying, I'll go get the manager. I don't want the manager to go touch the table unless it's a very serious problem. I want it dealt with. They don't want to talk to 3 people and tell them the problem over and over again. Yes. Just deal with it. So anyways, that's part of it. I want to be careful that, if I take it back to the point of this conversation, which is, how do I raise prices without losing people? Listen, if they just complain about the price, I'm not here to tell you to give it to them for free, but I am here to say that they're not complaining about the price. That's what I truly believe. If you're priced appropriately, that is not the complaint. And you have to be interested then and look in that mirror and find out where the gaps and the chinks in your armor are, because there is some. They're there.
Yep. Is there gaps in your operation? Or if there's truly not, and you went through, then maybe they're not the right customer for your business, or maybe that item shouldn't be on your menu at all. So that's kind of the way you go with it. So just to recap a little bit, the main things when raising prices, number one, we want to raise them appropriately. So that means we don't just arbitrarily raise everything by $1. Some things we need to raise by more or less. We need to actually do some math and figure that out. The next piece of that as well is we also need to look at what our competitors are doing, so that for our style of restaurant, we need to make sure that we're fitting within our competitive advantage. We don't want to be the highest and we don't want to be the lowest. We ideally want to be like 90% towards the highest. Because here's the reason why I say that is because on a continuum of, like low price to high price, whereas you go lower price, you're going to have higher volume, and you go highest price, you're going to have lower volume. We're trying to hit in that range where we can keep it as high as possible, but still getting the max amount of customers. That's where we're trying to hit it. So somewhere in that like 85, 90% range, usually, we want to be close to the highest one, because you want to have a premium service. I believe that's where the money is. We want to have that premium experience as well. That's where the max profitability is, right? So looking at that, we want to make sure we're priced appropriately in relation to the competition. We need to make sure we do our math and do our price increases properly. And then once you do that, we actually have to make sure the goods back up the price. Mm-hmm. We got to make sure our product lives up to what it should be, because if it doesn't, we then go into a negative value proposition. Instead of getting this, $30, like feeling like you're getting like this $100 steak for $30, all of a sudden if someone's paying $30 and they feel they got a $15 steak, well, that's a bad thing. That's where you're gonna lose that. Then make sure you prepare your team to be able to handle for any negative situations that do come up and any gaps, and just make sure you are ready overall. And the last thing I would say is make sure you actually track your numbers. So that means your customer counts. You want to be looking at your overall sales data. You want to be looking at your average check, and looking at all those and comparing them, not week over week or month over month, but rather year over year, and seeing the trends that way. Because if you think that raising your prices is why your sales went down, it may or may not be that way. But if it is, we need to explore why. But first, we need to make sure that that is really what has happened, right? So on that note, this should give you some of the tools you need to go ahead and feel more confident, because at the end of the day, you will have to increase your prices as a restaurant owner, because the world keeps changing, prices keep going up, and if you don't do it, you will get left behind. And we just want to make sure that you guys lose the fear around it and use some data instead to make sure you're doing it right, make sure you're prepared for it, to make sure you can keep the money in your bank account.
I'm going to give it one added bonus at the end here, if you don't mind. Here's the bonus. And here's the 3 decades of experience speaking. Do it regularly. Avoid sticker shock. Because if you go and you take these tidbits of training and execution and pricing and profit management, if you take them and you do it now and you haven't done it for 3 years, you are going to have complaints. You are going to have to raise your prices by $3 or $12 or whatever crazy number it might end up being. And you need to avoid that sticker shock. And the best way to do that is through a routine and a committed process that is repeated as appropriate for your business, right? So it's not every 2 years. It's not every year. I would assert that it's likely a quarterly process. Listen, minimum of 2 times a year. Minimum. If you're not doing it 2 times a year, you're not staying on top of it. Quarterly is what I would highly recommend. Whether something changes or not, you need to know the lay of the land. Or once again, you're going to find yourself in a spot where you're fielding complaints based on pricing, which are not complaints based on pricing usually. So yeah, I think that piece it needs to be said.
Awesome. Well, Nathan, thank you for being here. I hope everyone got some great value today. So let's make more money with our restaurants, and we'll see you on the next one. This episode is brought to you by Ownership Training, where we help restaurant owners increase their profits while spending more time with their family. And if you want to know exactly what it would take to grow your profit margin to 15% and beyond while spending more time with your family, my team has a few spots open this week for a free 15-minute restaurant assessment call. Just click the book a call link in the description and we'll show you the exact frameworks we're using to help our clients do this in as little as 6 to 8 weeks. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.